Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Midwest Medium Podcast. I'm your host, June Hessler. Thank you for joining me and welcome back. Today is a fun episode because we have a special guest, and she is an animal communicator. You've heard on this podcast me talk about my experiences with animal communication with deceased pets and also pets that are here with us on Earth. So we will have my special guest come on in a little bit. But first, there are some things that are coming up that are fun that I want to share with you. Saturday, September 14th, Holly and I are having another massage and mediumship event in Coon Rapids, Minnesota. It starts at 10 a.m. It'll go for about an hour and a half. I always go as long as spirit keeps me open. I've learned that's about an hour and a half. So, if you're not familiar with what massage and mediumship is, it's first of all, it's super fun. I do a group reading. We have 10 people. I do a group reading for everyone, and everyone gets an individualized massage in her massage chair from Holly, and we have a really great time. There's laughter, there's tears. It's a really great experience. So you can sign up for that. Again, it's September 14th. You can email Holly at vhmassage21@gmail.com. I will make sure that's in the show notes. The cost is $60, and I do donate 50% of my profits from the event to charity. My profits from this particular event will go to Angels Among Us Foundation, which you've heard me talk about before. So it'll be a lot of fun. And also, not long after, on Tuesday, October 8th, I'm holding a virtual group reading over Zoom. So anyone who'd like to sign up, you can email info@junehessler.com. It starts at 8 p.m. Central Time. The cost is $30. I donate 50% of my profits to charity. This particular event's charity is the Alexandra House in Blaine, Minnesota, which is a shelter for women and children who are victims of domestic and sexual violence. So it's an organization that I've really held near and dear to my heart for a long time. And I do what I can when I can to help them. So that's Tuesday, October 8th. And I hope that you'll join for perhaps one or both of these events. They're a lot of fun. Um, okay, let's see. What else do I want to talk about? I think at some point, I'm not sure exactly when, but at some point, I want to do an episode about clearing ghosts and negative energies and entities from people's homes. It's something I'm becoming more familiar with and something I've been working on a little bit more and more. So I'm hoping to soonish, I don't know when, because I want to make sure I have enough good information, accurate information to give you before obviously I record that episode, but I think that'll be coming up. That's how it's feeling. That's where I'm being directed lately. So that'll be coming up at some point, I think this year. So if you have questions on any of that, email info@junehessler.com. I'm always happy to answer your questions. If you're wondering a question, there's a good chance someone else is wondering the same question. That's my philosophy. So um, send them over. Okay, you guys. So my guest, as I mentioned, is an animal communicator. Her name is Faryn Beverino. I think I'm saying that correctly. She's an animal communicator who is able to connect with living and deceased pets from a young age. Faryn felt a deep sensitivity to animals, and after high school, he spent over a decade caring for sheltered animals ranging from many different types of species, including reptiles and birds, which I think is interesting. After taking a break from her animal work, she then returned to her passion and quickly discovered that she has the gift of animal communication. So, up next, we will have Faryn. All right, you guys, we're back. I have my guest Faryn here, as I mentioned earlier. But what I didn't mention, Faryn, is how we got connected. So I was playing around with social media one day and I was like, okay, I've heard a lot about Threads. I'm going to join Threads. It's supposed to be kind of like a Twitter, which I've never worked on. And I'm going to join Threads and see what all of that is about. So I did and quickly found Faryn. And I was drawn to her because, of course, the animal communication, it's something I do and something I'm very interested in. And she just seemed, in her posting, she seemed really down to earth and not super like out there. And I don't know, I can't really explain it. I just was drawn to her and we started communicating a little bit and I invited her to come on the podcast. And since then I've deleted my threads because I didn't like it. So,
I did too.
oh, you did?
I did. I
Oh,
didn't
that's so
care for
funny.
it.
Okay, so maybe that was the only reason for me to be on threads was so I could find you.
There you go.
So
There you go.
we'll go with that. So Faryn, I've explained on this podcast before how animal communication works for me when I communicate with deceased pets and living pets. Can you explain for you what animal communication is and how it works for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So animal communication is the ability to connect with pets on an intuitive level. So to be able to communicate with them telepathically, to be able to feel what they're feeling, any images that they're sending me to be able to pick that up, and then giving that, basically communicating telepathically back to them, and it really helps to understand animals on a deeper level, to be able to help them, to be able to fully understand them, to be able to help them with behavioral issues, health issues. Although I'm not a vet, and I can't medically diagnose, but it does bring a deeper, broader understanding than how, we might understand them through, body language or vocalization or anything like that. Um, how it works for me, is I get I get a lot of different things, and I never know how it's gonna work for me when I first go into it, but I get images. Sometimes I get movies, like it'll feel like a little movie clip. Sometimes I will feel sensations in my body. Sometimes I will hear from them, telepathy. And sometimes that can sound like in my own mind, as if it's my own voice, but it's almost like that thought is put in there. And sometimes I can actually hear it, as if I can hear like a voice outside, but that's not as common for me. Sometimes I can taste, sometimes I can smell. And those aren't as common for me. But when they do happen, it is very intense and sometimes it
Yeah,
catches me off guard for sure.
yeah,
And every so often, I can see things from their perspective as if I were wearing if I were behind their eyes or if I was wearing like their goggles, like I can almost like I'm experiencing it myself. So those are some of the ways that I receive information from the animals. Sometimes I see words too, kind of like typed out in front of me.
yeah,
And then when it comes to communicating with animals in spirit, the animals that have crossed over, it is more of imagery, videos, impressions. So getting a sense of what they are like, their personality. And then also, telepathy is pretty heavy for me in mediumship sessions. So, yeah, that's pretty much how it works for me.
so I have to ask, so my experience with animal communication is I kind of really stumbled upon it by accident.
Same.
Um, I was going to ask you how that happened because for me, I was doing mediumship readings back when I was practicing with my psychic development classmates, and all of a sudden their deceased pets started coming in.
Wow.
And that's how I discovered I could communicate with deceased pets. And then later on, I thought, well, I wonder if I can communicate with living pets. So I would practice on friends and families who had pets. And that's how I found that I could do that. So How did you like, did you intentionally seek out this ability, or how did it come into your life?
I didn't. So for me, I have experience working at a humane society and I worked there for over 10 years. And I became really good friends with a coworker. And her and we talked a lot about the spiritual community. We were kind of getting into crystals and things like that. And so she was really somebody that I felt like I could just talk to about, these kind of things. And I eventually left that job to take care of my family. I became a stay-at-home mom, and so we stayed in contact. And one day she reached out to me, and we were talking. We hadn't really talked in a long time, and she some of that stuff kind of came back. So I started picking up that her grandmother was around, her grandmother that had crossed over, and just little things like that. But I never really thought much of it. And then that turned into communicating with, and I say communication lightly because I wasn't intentionally communicating, but I was picking up things from her own pets. And one day she said, Faryn, I think you are an animal communicator. Oh, hello.
Okay, Farron, sorry, my internet dropped. So you were explaining how you were talking with a friend of yours.
Yes.
Um, so just take it away.
Sure. Yeah. So anyway, this friend had noticed my animal communication abilities. I kind of laughed it off. I didn't really think much of it. I just thought I was a really great intuitive. And so she was like, I really think that you should volunteer your time helping with some of the shelter animals that at um the same place that her and I used to work together. And I was like, well, I don't really know if I'm, quite an animal communicator and I don't really know how to do it. And she's like, just try. It
Yeah.
can't help to try. And I was like, okay, fine, sure. So that's pretty much how it started. I was just kind of in awe as it was happening. And it was kind of funny because I was in the middle of running errands and I had just parked in front of a craft store. I was making a wreath and it was over text and I was sitting in my driver's seat. I got my family in the car and it was just like I just started happening. And so um although it was an amazing experience, I wasn't really sure if it was happening. I thought maybe she was just being super nice and maybe
Oh,
feeding into
yeah.
it a little bit like you're doing great.
Yeah.
But what really made it real for me is that she started showing me before and after pictures. She started telling me about this dog's progress because this was a really particularly shut down dog. And he ended up getting adopted. It was awesome. And after that interaction, I had heard from a cat, I heard me next. And I was like,
Oh,
no way. And so I sent her a text. I'm like, would you happen to have a gray cat in isolation? And she was like, stop. So I just started doing animal communication for her every day for 2.5 years. I actually still do it, but I did that for 2.5 years before I actually started to maybe consider that this is something that I want to actually do.
yeah.
That's how it started for me. And then the mediumship portion of it actually picked up for me within the last 6 months because I started going live and I was doing readings for people, animal communication sessions. And then every once in a while, an animal would come through. So that's how
That
that
was
happened for
deceased.
me. Yes, that was
Okay.
deceased. And so it was kind of like learning on the job kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much how it happened for me. If it wasn't for my friend, I wouldn't be here. If it wasn't for her pushing
Yeah.
and not in a negative way, but more encouraging,
Encouraging. Yep.
yeah, I wouldn't be here. So I'm very grateful for her. Yeah.
So having done that for sheltered animals,
Mhm.
is there an over is there like an overlaying theme or message that the animals would give you that you could tell us? Is there something that you would see like a pattern that you would see consistently over time with the sheltered animals? What do they want us to know?
With the sheltered animals, they're very sensitive. They're very sensitive. And a lot of times they don't understand why they're there. A lot of
Yeah.
times they think that they're just being boarded or they're being at a vet's office. I've actually
Okay.
communicated with a cat where the cat was like, "I just want to go see the vet and be done and over with," because
Yeah.
that cat's kennel was actually right outside of the vet's door and was smelling the smells and seeing animals come and go. And so,
Yeah.
a lot of times they're confused. They're not understanding. And they need patience. There's a lot of things that, and for me, having worked at a humane society for over 11 years, I thought that I understood. You know what I mean? Like I understand, I'm like, I have experience, I know. But it's like,
Yeah.
I really don't know.
Yeah.
Because how they view things is a lot different than what we think. We see a cat be brought in, it's like, oh, well, they just got here and they're really stressed out.
Yeah.
That's normal. But maybe, like, for example, that cat that I'd communicated with, it was like, I never would have considered that that cat was thinking it was just sitting around for a week, thinking it was like, when is it my turn? I want to see this vet and I want to go home. And that's
Oh,
why it was stressed out. And as soon as I communicated with this cat, the cat was moved. I did work with my friend on that. My friend's like, we're going to find him another shelter, another kennel, excuse me. And that cat started doing much better. So, and eventually found a home. So, you know, the how we perceive them and why they're stressed out is maybe not the reason that they're actually stressed out. They are
yeah.
very sensitive to sound. They're very sensitive to the employees and their energy. So if there's
Mm-hmm.
employees that are coming in, they're mad, they're angry, they're frustrated, those animals are taking on that. They don't understand, well, why is this employee or this volunteer acting this way, or why do they feel different? Because they're not just navigating the world, their environment, they're navigating our emotions. They're trying to figure that out,
Yeah.
people that work with them every single day. So,
Yeah. That makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah, that makes
Yeah,
sense. They are very sensitive. Yeah, from my experience
very.
as a pet owner and
Yep.
as a medium and psychic, having worked with other people's pets also.
Oh, yeah. And some more than others, truly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I found that to be really fascinating, really interesting, to be like, oh, I never really thought about that, before. The first dog that I communicated with, the one that my friend was like, just give it a try. His name was Bo, and he was bummed out because he thought his owner was coming back for him. So he was
Oh,
just waiting. And when I
yeah.
explained why, and I explained the owner didn't want to give him up, and because I got the bit of the backstory on that, and was saying, like, as soon as you perk up, as soon as you eat and understand, and then we can find you a new home. And and this dog was like, oh, can I have a home with a yard, and can I do, like, was asking for, like, can I do these things, trying to help him through that process. Then he started turning around. And so it's really about, I've seen communication really be helpful in a shelter setting, because it's really about, just there's a lot of misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And I think having to surrender an animal, which I haven't had to do with, having to give up in a shelter, I think is heartbreaking anyway. And then when the
yeah.
animal doesn't fully understand and thinks that that owner is coming back, it just adds to the heartbreak. And I don't think us as people really put much effort into putting ourselves in their shoes and what it must feel
Hmm.
like for them. So I'm hoping that all these animals that do get adopted into good homes are just as happy as they were before.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen animals come back after being adopted and they're light, their energy is just, they're expansive, they're happy, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. And it doesn't just happen to, people who are giving up their pets. It can happen with fosters.
Oh, sure.
I've communicated with someone who was fostering a cat for a bit and decided, okay, well, the shelter wants the cat back. The cat's ready to be, rehomed to be adopted. And when people were trying to engage with this cat, the cat was like, no. And when I communicated with the cat was like, they're not my mom. Like, that's my
Yeah,
mom. And so they thought that that was their home, but really it was a foster situation. So they attach
mhm,
easily, to certain staff and volunteers and fosters, and because it's not always, it's not always with the owners, like not every animal misses their owner. I mean, I hate to say that.
sure.
But sometimes, there's bonds that are like it's really heartbreaking, and there's some where it's like, okay, on to the next chapter.
Yeah.
So, but it is very interesting. Yeah.
I often wonder, so the two cats that we've had, we just have one now. But the first cat I adopted years and years ago, he was 5 when we got him.
Mhm.
And the cat we have now, we adopted him last year, so he was 11 at the time.
Oh,
And I
wow.
wonder if they remember, like once they're settled in the new environment with their new people and they appear happy, they seem happy, I
Yes.
wonder if they have memories. Do you have, I
They
mean,
do.
I'm totally putting you on the spot, but do they have memories of like, I'll call it their previous life?
They do, and it really depends. It's interesting because I have asked animals, somebody will be like, I adopted them, they're adjusted, they're doing well. We adopted them about a year ago, and they want to know about their previous life. A lot of times the animals will be like, why? Like, why do you want to know? Because they don't necessarily want to go back,
Okay.
which tells me a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're like, "Oh yeah," and they'll show me. They'll show me that maybe there was a little girl or a little boy, or maybe they used to be outside and they have this big yard that they used to run around in. So they'll
Yeah.
show me in images, almost like the memories are replaying, but it's not like I get a full story. It's more of like I will see snippets of what
Sure.
their life was like, and good and bad, unfortunately. Sometimes they will show
Yeah.
me traumatic things, and I basically just have to say, I got the picture. And I just kind of have to stop it there, but they will remember. But I do find that when they're really happy in their new home, I don't find it to be really beneficial to go back and talk about that, because
Sure.
you know, um, sometimes the animals are like, why? Why do we need to go back? But they do
Yeah.
have those memories. They do, absolutely.
I find that so interesting. So you've been doing this for a very long time. Have you noticed your animal communication abilities evolve over time? Have they changed? Like, I'm just wondering if your abilities have changed over time. Was it kind of maybe a little bit fuzzy in the beginning when your friend was pushing you and encouraging you, and you've
So,
gotten much
yeah,
more clear? Because a lot of it is in your third eye.
yeah,
So, and obviously you're using your other psychic channels, your other chakras as well.
yes.
Um, so anyway, long question short, how have your abilities evolved over time?
Well, in the very beginning, the first thing I want to say is I didn't understand that animals could hear me and understand me.
Okay.
So I just thought that I was picking up on their energy. So it was all pictures and videos for me. And that's how it was for a while. And then after a few months, maybe like 3 to 6 months, then I started realizing that they really were understanding me, because I would ask them to do certain things. And although it's not a consistent thing, I can't force animals to do anything. It's not mind control. But I would start seeing, people would come back and they'd be like, you told them to do this and they're now doing it. And it was almost like overnight, like, what is happening? So then I'd be like, they really do hear me. They really do
Yeah.
understand me. And then from then on, then I started noticing sensations in my body. That I have to be honest, I thought it was me because it felt so real. Like I would get pain
Yeah.
and I'd be like, this is my own pain. Where did this
That
come from?
happens. That happens to me too. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so interesting.
it's
And then
so
you
real.
realize it's not you and it's
Yep.
for whoever you're communicating for.
Yes. It took me a while to figure that out. And I think one of the things that kind of sealed it for me was my friend, the same friend who asked me to do animal communication. Her cat got into a plant.
Okay.
Okay. And so she was like, oh, I hope he's going to be okay. And so I was talking with him, and all of a sudden my gums kind of went numb. I was
Oh,
like, oh, that's weird. And so I had to stop the reading because I was like, oh my God, what's happening to me? I'm freaking out because I
yeah.
don't know what's happening. And then I put two and two together and I went, oh, I wonder. And so I asked her the name of the plant, and I don't remember it, but I Googled it real quick, and one of it wasn't poisonous where like the cat had to go to the vet, but would have certain symptoms.
Sure.
And one of those symptoms was like tingling, numbing in the gums, like from chewing.
Was your mind just like like
I was
exploding?
like, no way, no way, no way. So that's when I was like, okay, I get it now. I know that when I'm connected with an animal, I do take it with a grain of salt. I understand that just every sensation that I have in my body when I'm communicating with an animal doesn't necessarily, mean it's theirs. It could be mine too. But I do notice that pattern, especially if I intentionally ask the animal, they'll either tell me or I'll feel it. But then that started happening. And then I started getting the smells. Then I
Yeah.
started getting, and that was even more intense. And then the telepathy started coming towards the end. And that one was a little more difficult for me to grapple with because it sounded like my own thoughts, like it's my own
Yeah.
voice, like your
I
inner
get it.
thoughts. So
Yeah.
that's how it worked for me. Now, in the very beginning, I was very skeptical.
Hmm.
And everything that I got, I was like, well, I wasn't confident about it. And so I would say the confidence over the years has really, I've now gotten to a point where I'm like, I know this is what it is,
Hmm.
because I've worked with it for so long. So I'm much more confident about it. I wouldn't say it's necessarily clear or anything like that. It's just my confidence is better. I
Yeah.
understand my gifts better.
Hmm.
And I am also open to understanding that I don't have expectations when I go in. Before, I
Right.
was like, oh, I'm going to receive images, so it's going to be images. So when I'd communicate with an animal and I wasn't getting images, I was
You
getting voice.
control you control nothing.
You control nothing. That
Yeah.
was something that I learned. So, and then the mediumship came in at the very end. And so I am pretty much just very open to receiving, how the animals want to communicate, how I receive the information. So that's pretty much how it's evolved for me over time. And
So
who
I want
knows?
to
We'll go from there.
right. Well, I think it's so the mediumship for you is more recent, which is really cool.
Yes.
I do want to go. So I'm very curious about the smell and taste.
Yeah.
My assumption right now is that the smell is unpleasant. And I'm guessing the taste is unpleasant also because my thought is you're tasting dog treats or cat treats or dog or cat food.
It's interesting. I'm very uncomfortable with the taste and the smell, and that's probably why it doesn't come through for me a lot. And the
Okay.
reason I'm uncomfortable is because it catches me off guard and it feels it's real. Like I don't really know.
Yeah,
It's in the same way that you might smell bacon in the morning or something really
sure.
strong that you're like, I know I'm smelling bacon.
Yep.
It's the same. And I've actually had this phenomenon in my life here and there, not like outside of animal communication, where I'm like, I know I'm smelling a cologne right now and there's nobody here. And it's
Yeah.
like I get up and I smell and I smell and I'm like, I know I can smell it. I don't wear
Yeah.
perfume. And you know, I will have my husband come up and be like, "Do you smell this?" And he'd be like, "No." So that's kind of
Okay.
how it started. Now with for the animals, the smell, I've had you know, cats show me that their litter box was dirty, so I will actually smell like that strong
Got it.
cat pee
Okay.
smell.
Yep.
I have smelled, you know, it is unpleasant. And as soon as I smell it, my first thought isn't, oh, it's the animal communicating that. My first thought is, where is that coming from?
Yeah.
Please hold. Let me like figure out where I'm smelling this from. I remember doing an animal communication where this dog was telling me he wasn't feeling good, and I could feel that the dog was bloated because I
Okay.
was feeling it in my body, and all of a sudden I just smelled this, you know, dog gas, and I
Mhm.
it was so oh, it was so over the top. It was so bad, and I was kind of embarrassed because I didn't want to tell the owner that, but I was like, God, I could just smell it, and
Yeah.
it like kind of made me want to, you know, it made me sick.
Yeah. You have to like
And
figure out a graceful way to communicate this to the
yeah,
person you're
well,
reading for.
and I have to figure out like, well, I know it's not me, and there's nobody else in
Yeah.
the room with me. I mean, the window was open at the time, so I'm like, is there garbage? I'm like, well, but we all
Yeah.
know what that smell is. And the owner, before I said anything, said, God, they've got really bad gas, like
Mhm.
horrible, horrible. And I went, that's what it is. So it is very uncomfortable. The taste is it's okay. It's not the worst thing. Um, it's more of, and it's not, I haven't gotten taste where it's very specific. It's more of like that tastes good or that tastes bad or that might taste sour or pungent or
Oh,
spicy.
okay.
It's
Okay.
it I haven't gotten, at least I'm trying to go back in my memory. I can't think of anything where it was like a specific taste. It's
Uh-huh.
just more of like if somebody was like, you know, why is my cat not eating my food? The cat might show me what it tastes like, and I'll be like, oh no, it tastes fine. Oh, this one tastes better. It's more of
Yeah.
a, but I can taste it. It's just not specific like the smell would be. The smell is
Okay.
very specific, and it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But yeah, out of all the ways for me to connect with an animal, those two are a little more uncomfortable because it feels real and it's almost distracting. So I don't know if it's because I'm not as open to it that doesn't happen as often because I'm more likely to kind of shut it down. Um,
Yeah.
I'm more used to the imagery. So
Yeah, I'm the same way. I will sometimes smell, sometimes taste,
yeah,
but that is much more rare for me than the images, pictures, and movies,
yeah,
or the telepathy or hearing with my physical ears. Like my other psychic channels are just open more greatly, so the smell
yeah,
and taste is rare.
yeah.
So I get it, but when it's there, and you
It's
know it's
there.
there.
There's no
Yeah.
pretending. It's not like,
Oh,
oh, a faint. It's like, nope, nope, I'm smelling it. It's so
yeah,
strange. It's
it
really
is
hard to
strange.
describe other
Yeah,
than
and
real.
for me, the taste is like things I would never eat. Like I remember one time, this was probably a year or two ago, I was tasting it was like I would taste it and I didn't know what it was. And then like the thought was given to me of pumpernickel bread. And I was like, what?
Whoa.
That's what that tastes like? Oh, I don't like it. You know,
Wow. That's
I mean, it's just
interesting.
it's crazy. So I
Yeah.
get what you're saying that it's rare, but when it comes, it is undeniable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would
So,
even say it happens in mediumship sessions too.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah. So, what would you say is your favorite aspect of what you do? And do you have a favorite story or two that you'd like to share?
Sure. Yeah. My favorite aspect, you know, I really enjoy helping the animals feel heard. And I enjoy helping people with people, the owners and pets with behavioral issues because I like having see outcomes, positive outcomes. You know, somebody saying, you know, I really want to walk my dog. My dog and I are really bonded, but every time I try to walk him, they're reacting, they're going after other dogs.
Oh,
Um,
sure.
and
Yeah.
then coming back and being like, you talk to them and oh my gosh, I'm able to take him out for a walk. And I'm like, it's almost like I forget that I can do what I do. And I'm like, it's amazing. I get really excited because it's like
It validates
it does, but it's
and
also
it helps
like,
the dog and the owner.
it
Yeah.
does. It's what I love about it is being able to create positive change, to be able to
Yeah.
help for owners and pets to have a better relationship that, their cat is maybe not hiding under the bed as much. I remember talking with this woman and she was saying she was very sick, she was very ill, and she had to go into have surgery soon, but until then she was kind of bedridden. The cat was hiding. And I did a communication session. I just let the cat know, like, your owner would like to spend time with you, if you want to come up on the bed. And after the session, she came back the next day. I think it was like a day or two had gone by, and she said, um, I don't know what it is you did, but the cat, I forget the cat's name, but this cat was spending time on the bed, purring, and she was able to pet him. And
Oh,
I just, to me, it's like, it's so cool. It's just so
yeah.
cool to see this gift be used for, building that relationship. So that's my favorite. That's my favorite. Um, my favorite story, there's a couple of them. I love when animals make me laugh or they're really sharp or quick wit. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've had that experience. I'm
Yeah.
sure you
Their
have.
personality shines through.
Yes. And so I remember I was talking with this horse. And I'm not used to talking with horses as much. My experience is more with cats and dogs, but occasionally I'll communicate with a bird or a horse. And this horse was young and just very fun and very quick. And towards the end of the session, the owner asked, does he have anything else to say? And the horse brought up this rope. And I don't know a lot about horses, but it turned out that it was a lead. Okay, it
Okay.
was a lead, and the horse had shown me that, and I said to owner, "Well, he wants to know what this is," and she goes, "Oh yeah, tell him not to worry about it." And I was like, "Okay." So I told the horse, I said, "Just don't worry about it." And he goes, "Well, what's the point of animal communication then?" And he
Yeah.
said it so fast, and I mean, it caught me off guard because most of that session was visual. It wasn't a lot of talking.
Hmm.
And it cracked me up because, and I told her, and she goes, "Oh my gosh." She goes, "It sounds just like him, like something he would say." So that cracked me up. Um, and then there was a time where I communicated with this cat, um, who thought very highly of himself and was just a really
As I think
neat.
most cats do.
Yes. Well, it was a Maine Coon and very kind of gave this like kingly, like I'm
Oh,
to be respected and and I was like, wow. He really thought very highly of himself and almost like people are peasants kind of
yeah.
thing, and which was really interesting. And the owner wanted to, we were talking about taking the cat outside and basically the cat was like, why are people so complicated? Like, why are you making this such a big deal? Like, just take me outside. Why does it have to be the leash and the stroller? And it was kind of
Yeah.
like, you're making this such a big deal. And the owner laughed, but I was like, it is interesting.
It's a good question.
It's a good question. It was something where, and my favorite thing about that was like, it made me think about that. It made me question, like, do we make things complicated? I guess in a way. I mean, I think we have good reason. You know, I know there's debate about indoor cats, outdoor cats, but it's like if you want your cat to be outside, but you want them to be safe, maybe you do want to use, a leash or maybe a stroller. But he was just like you're making this complicated. Like just take me outside. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, though would say those would be my two favorite stories, aside from the first time I ever did animal communication. So.
So on the flip side, what is the hardest part or your least favorite part of doing what you do?
I would say the hardest part about animal communication is when I see, notice, or feel a disconnect between the pet and owner. And when the owner is asking very selfish things of their pet.
Okay.
And there's no coming together. There's no for and it's mostly from the person, right? It's not really from the animal, but kind of like I need my animal to do this. And the animal might say, the pet might say, well, if you're going to do that, I would like to have this, and there's no compromise. It's
Hmm.
like I need you to tell them this, and this is how it is. That can be a little frustrating. It can be difficult because the animal is communicating with me about their needs, and I want the animal's needs to be heard. I want them to
Yeah.
feel validated,
Right.
because I don't really see my job as is coming in and being like, you need to not do this and you need to not do that and stop barking. And it's like I like to problem solve. Like, why are you barking? Well, I'm barking because of this reason. Owner, how can we work together? So, that's how I come from. That's what I want to do. So I would say that's the hardest part is when I do come across somebody who's using animal communication more for their selfish needs than really thinking about what the animal's needs are, what they want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
it seems to me that it's going beyond the animal communication and really it's you're advocating for the animal. You're an animal
yes,
advocate is what it
yes,
is. Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's important, it's important for everybody to feel understood. I can understand if somebody says, I really need my cat to stop waking me up at 3 in the morning, that I communicate with the cat. But I also kind of communicate with them in a way that it'll best benefit the cat as well, so that they'll
Yeah.
understand, like, your owner will feel more refreshed. They'll wake up, and if they feel refreshed, maybe they'll wake up a little bit earlier and they'll spend that time with you. But you
Right.
can't be waking them up at 3 in the morning because people need sleep. They can't just sleep in the middle of the day like you can do.
Right. Like
So
you
I
can,
try
yeah.
to explain it to them so that they understand, and sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, okay. All right, so I won't do that." But then they're wanting still that compromise. But yeah, and I think that's really because I come from animal welfare.
Hmm.
I feel like animals need to be heard. It's really about how we can work together and not really like what the animal needs to change for the human's selfish needs kind of thing.
Right. And I would say if the expectation of the person is that the animal needs to change to meet the person's wants and desires, then you probably shouldn't have a pet because
Yeah.
that's not a good fit, it seems, or a good
No, it's not.
situation.
And I have done those sessions where I leave the session, I'm like, "Ah, this is not a good fit. It's not." And
Yeah,
if it comes up, if anything like that comes up and the person's kind of like, I just don't think it's a good fit, I'll be honest with them, but in a way that, I'm used to having talks with people like that, having worked at a shelter. I've
sure.
had to deal with people coming in and needing to relinquish their pet and having that real conversation of, what is best for them, what is best for the pet, what is best for
Right,
everybody, and how we can move forward. Like, yeah, it sucks right now, but this animal is highly adoptable. And, think about how this will be a benefit to everybody. So I might have to have those conversations if it comes up. It's
sure.
rare in animal communication, but sometimes I'm like, oh boy, how do I navigate this so that the owner is more compassionate and understands that their animal may be behaving in a certain way because of what the person is doing. That
Exactly.
is really hard to be like, you need to stop yelling at your animal so much. That's not an effective way.
Yeah,
Or maybe, we need to change how we approach our training methods. So it can be hard. And sometimes it's something as simple as you got this specific breed, you're going to be dealing with these specific things, and there's no
yeah,
real way around it. Like you got a herding dog, you expect it to sit quietly on a couch in an apartment. I
probably not
hate
going
to
to
tell
happen.
you, but it doesn't matter what I communicate to them. Their instincts are going to kick in. So,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
So I wonder then, given how highly in tune you are with animals, Are you able to turn your abilities off? Because when I was first getting to know you a little bit over threads, I was wondering, well, gosh, does she go to the zoo and is she just bombarded by all these animal messages? Or are
Mhm.
you able to just like turn it off and go to the zoo unaffected?
Yeah, so I don't really resonate with like turn off because I don't really feel turned on all the time. It's more of like I lean into it's almost like I choose to lean into it. Do you
Okay.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I when it comes to animals, of course, I'm gonna I have a connection to them. I see a bird out my window. I'm like, oh, there's a little bird outside my window, but it's more of I have to really try and put effort to communicate. It's not
Sure.
something that it's not like I go to a dog park and I can hear dogs talking to me. It's not quite like that. At
Okay.
least not for me.
Hmm.
I actually and I haven't gone to a zoo in a really long time. The last time I went to the zoo, I didn't know about my abilities. It wasn't happening then, but I could sense whether an animal didn't feel good or not. So I think on
Okay.
some level I was picking up on them like, how they were feeling. Like I could look at an animal and be like, "Ooh, they're not feeling so good."
Yeah.
But I couldn't communicate. But I did, me and my husband, we went to a museum recently and they did have some animal exhibits, which I didn't think that they were going to have. And I actually tried and I couldn't do it. I don't know what it was, but I wasn't able to do it. I was like, let me just see if I can. Although at the very end, this place did have bears. And
Hmm.
something that I've learned is that when an animal is in front of me, it's actually really hard for me to communicate. When
Oh,
they're
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So pictures, like if people show me a picture, I can't do it that way. I can't do it with the animal right in front of me. It's almost like I have to be in a space to do it. It's
Hmm.
almost like the seeing the animal is more of a distraction. So towards the end of our trip at the museum, I found a bench, I sat down and I tried to focus my energy on this bear,
Uh-huh.
and I was picking up information.
You just
But
needed to be separated from it physically. That's so interesting.
yeah, I can't do it. I mean, I do lives all the time and I will do readings and I'll get people who will, they want a reading or they'll ask me a question. Their picture of their pet is on their profile picture and people will be like, like, well, you can see their animal and it's like I can't I actually don't
Yeah.
look at their profile picture because it's almost like distracting. In fact, I ask that people don't send me pictures of their pets before a reading. And I think that might just be because working at an animal shelter, you tend to have certain ideas about breeds. You know
Sure.
what I mean? Like you see a shepherd, your mind is going to come in and start telling you about what a shepherd does and what a shepherd is. And
Yeah.
I like to get to know the animal genuinely, intuitively, without looking at pictures. I don't want my mind talking to me. I
Yeah.
don't want somebody to say, I have a Yorkie, because then it's almost like I'm going to pretend I
Yep.
didn't hear that
Yeah.
because they don't always feel like, sound like, communicate like a Yorkie. I would say the only exception is probably cats because cats have a very specific way of communicating, but at least for me. But yeah, I can't do it with an animal right in the room. Now I'm trying to, right now, I'm practicing with my own cats. I had just adopted two cats about 3 months ago. And so
Okay.
I'm trying that out. It's a little
Yeah.
weird for me because I'm not used to it that way. But yeah,
You're
as of right
experimenting.
now, I'm experimenting. Yeah. And I have gotten some communication and I think because I'm more grounded and skeptical, I don't go, oh, I heard this. This must be true. I just kind of go, okay, that's interesting. I'll write it down and we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't get bombarded. Now what I will say is when I am connected with people, like people that I know in my life, if I'm texting them or I'm on the phone with them, I will pick up their animal. I will pick up on.
Interesting.
So I have
Yeah.
a friend who has 3 dogs and a cat. And every time I communicate with her, the cat pops in and is like, "Hey, how's it going?" Just he's very social and very outgoing. I just love this kid. He's an orange cat. So
Yeah. Oh, I
um
love orange. Our old cat
I
was an
do
orange kitty.
too.
They're the best. They
Yes, I
really are.
love orange cats. So, that will happen. But it's not just animals. Sometimes, her loved ones will come through and stuff like that. So I think it's more of how I place my focus.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, okay. So whether or not a person has a pet, is there something that you want everyone to know about animals?
Yeah, I want people to understand that animals, they're conscious. They have feelings, they have emotions, they have preferences, they have opinions. They're sensitive, they feel things, they see things. So they're empathic as well. I've met quite a lot of animals that do see your ancestors, do see spirits. Um, they do pick up on energy, and they're very, very sensitive. And I think it would be good if all of us, whether we're pet owners or not, if we just remember or at least come from a place of understanding that these animals are navigating the world, they're navigating their environment, they're navigating our emotions, they're navigating the unseen, but they don't have a voice. They're not able to communicate and express that. So if we could just be a little more patient, a little more compassionate, and a little more understanding and know that, if an animal is doing something that maybe you don't like, don't just assume it's a personal thing. Understand that
Sure.
there's other things going on and that animals are not just on some level, yes, they are basic, okay, instinctual beings, but there's a lot more that's going on beyond that, if that makes sense.
It
They're not
does.
just the physical, they're spiritual. And that's really important. And to yeah, just have respect and have compassion and understanding as we would hopefully, with each other. I think if we saw animals in the way that we see people, things would be better. So,
I think that's a really good message, a really good takeaway. And I love that you are I'm going to call it an animal advocate. I can tell that your heart is in the right place and
yeah.
that you have a deep passion for what you do. And I think we need more people like you in the world to help kind of bridge the gap between people and their pets. So,
Yes.
with all of that said, Faryn, how can people find you and schedule a reading? I know you have a website. Tell people what your website is.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So it's ravenspeakreadings.com. That is my website. You can absolutely book there. Um, I am on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and I'm also on TikTok. It's all at Raven Speak Readings.
Okay.
So you can find me there. And I also, if you're not able to book privately or you try to book privately and you see that there's not an opening that fits, know that I do go live on TikTok frequently. So you can also get a reading there as well. So
All right. I'll make sure to put all of that in the show notes so people have easy access to find you.
thank you.
And I'm going to ask you to stick around
Yes,
for a
absolutely.
minute after I stop the recording. But
Sure.
it was so nice to more officially meet you and talk
Yes,
to your actual
absolutely.
face. It was so nice.
It was nice
And
to meet you too.
thank you so much for coming on Midwest Medium Podcast.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm very honored and it was great to do this. So thank you for the invite. Appreciate it.